Hello, welcome to AFRITALES by Moonlight. Please show us some love by subscribing to our channel, leaving a comment, giving us a like, and sharing with your friends. Your support truly means the world to us. Thank you. Ethan Pierce sat in the back seat of his glossy black limousine, staring vacantly out the window as the city's shimmering skyline faded behind him. Each tower, built in part through his ruthless business acumen, reminded him of an empire he no longer cherished. Wealth, power, and privilege had surrounded him since birth, but it all felt meaningless. He was tired of existing in a world where people valued him only for his ability to clinch a deal, or worse, his fortune. He had planned this journey meticulously. Despite his father, Raymond Pierce, pushing him to marry a woman named Victoria, heiress to a massive conglomerate, Ethan had other plans. He wanted to abandon his comfortable life and go off-grid. Above all, he yearned for a genuine connection, an authentic love untouched by greed and social climbing. "I've never felt so sure about anything," Ethan murmured to Gregory, his chauffeur and the one person he trusted. Gregory responded with silence, maintaining the professional demeanor he'd perfected over 2 decades of loyal service. Yet he couldn't hide the concern in his eyes. At a nondescript service station at the outskirts of the city, Ethan stepped out of the vehicle. He carried a plain duffel bag containing only the bare essentials: a worn jacket, a couple of tattered shirts, and a small sum of cash. Gone were the sleek suits and polished cufflinks that had once symbolized his success. He handed Gregory an envelope full of instructions and a letter for his father. "You're sure you want to do this?" Gregory finally asked, his stoic facade melting into genuine worry. "Yes," Ethan replied, determination solidifying in his voice. "I have to." Gregory tried one last time. "Your father won't be happy." Ethan just shook his head. "He never is." As the limousine drove away, disappearing into a swirl of dust, Ethan started the second phase of his plan. He would travel to a small, isolated town far from his corporate empire. No one would recognize him there, and more importantly, they wouldn't suspect he was a man worth billions. First, he needed to alter his appearance drastically. Hours later, in the restroom of a shabby roadside motel, he cut his thick, well-groomed hair and deliberately frayed the edges of his clothes to give them a worn look. He applied subtle prosthetics and a thick scar-like makeup across the side of one leg, ensuring he appeared to walk with a limp. After studying dozens of online videos on how to use crutches effectively, he adopted their clunky rhythm, each step painfully slow, signaling that he was a man in constant pain. A day after leaving the city, Ethan found himself riding in the back of a rusted pickup truck belonging to a middle-aged farmhand he had met at a diner. The man was heading west to a rural community called Willowdale, so Ethan offered to chip in for gas. The farmhand looked at him suspiciously. Ethan's refined speech still peeked through his attempts at blending in, but shrugged and accepted the few crumpled bills. Wordlessly, he turned the radio on to an old country station. Dust clouds trailed behind them as they traveled deeper into a land of endless fields and towering silos. When they finally arrived in Willowdale, the farmhand let him off near a narrow dirt road leading to an aging sign that read "Welcome to Willowdale, where neighbors are family." The sign looked like it had seen better days: chipped paint, rusting edges, and vines tangled around the wooden posts. Undeterred, Ethan left the roadside and began hobbling along the path. A stinging sun beat down on him, and a sense of doubt briefly flared. What if this was a mistake? But he held on to his resolution. Despite the discomfort in his arms from supporting himself on crutches, he felt a small spark of freedom. No one was watching him with calculating eyes, and no one recognized him as the son of the wealthy Raymond Pierce. Out here, he could be anyone, even a poor, crippled wanderer. 2 miles down a winding dirt path, farmland stretched infinitely on either side. Tall stalks of corn brushed against the wind in vast waves, a sea of green and gold. The beating of his heart grew louder as exhaustion crept up on him. He hadn't eaten a proper meal since yesterday morning, his water supply was running low. The scorching heat blurred his vision, and a wave of dizziness caused him to stumble. It dawned on him just how vulnerable he was. For the first time in his life, he had no safety net. No credit cards, no lavish bank accounts to fall back on. His entire ruse demanded he live as if he had nothing, to test whether someone could care for him just for being him. By late afternoon, he was desperate. Every step sent jolts of pain through his arms as he dragged his aching legs behind him, half playing the role, half succumbing to genuine exhaustion. Eventually, he spotted a run-down barn in the distance, its red paint peeling away to reveal time-worn wood. Beyond it stood a small farmhouse with a sagging porch. A wisp of smoke coiled from the chimney, and the scent of cooked food teased his senses. With quiet resolve, Ethan made his way toward the farm, clinging to the hope that somewhere beneath that roof, he might find a kind soul willing to give him a morsel to eat. He had come here to find out if genuine compassion still existed, and if it could ever truly be directed at him. The late afternoon sunlight bathed the small farmstead in a soft, golden glow. The fence, though splintered, had been carefully mended at various points with bits of wire. Flowers, rudbeckias, daisies, and an array of wild blooms, bordered the farmhouse, their petals nodding to the fading warmth of day. Despite its modesty, the home exuded a sense of welcome and tranquility. From his vantage point, Ethan could see a young woman moving on the porch. She was sweeping dust off the creaking floorboards, occasionally pausing to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Even at a distance, there was a gentleness in her posture. Over the months of preparing for this venture, he had imagined 1,000 scenarios of how a stranger might respond to him. Fear, disdain, pity, he had braced himself for any possibility. But as he drew nearer, he couldn't shake the feeling that the woman on the porch would not meet him with cruelty. His heart pounded as he approached. The last remnants of daylight cast an elongated shadow ahead of him. The woman, noticing the movement, turned her head sharply. Their eyes met. He saw curiosity in her gaze, tinged with alarm. "Excuse me," Ethan began, forcing a ragged weakness into his voice. "I'm lost, and hungry. May I just need—" He swayed on his feet, the exhaustion and heat getting the better of him. The woman hurried toward him, dropping her broom onto the porch with a clatter. "My goodness. You look half dead." She gently guided him to a porch chair. "Wait right here. I'll fetch you some water." A moment later, she returned with a tall glass. Ethan gulped the cool liquid down, feeling his parched throat relax. His hands trembled. Whether from hunger or nerves, he couldn't be sure. The woman studied him carefully. "I've never seen you around here before. Are you traveling?" Ethan swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, I've been wandering from place to place for a while now," he replied, deliberately leaving out any hint of his true identity. He lifted his pant leg slightly, revealing the pretend scar. "I had an accident some time ago. Lost my job, lost everything. Just trying to find somewhere to rest." Concern welled in her eyes, softening her features. "I'm so sorry to hear that." She extended her hand. "I'm Layla. My father, Garrett, owns this farm." "Ethan," he answered simply. "Thank you for the water, Layla. I'm not sure how much farther I can walk." Layla chewed her lower lip, clearly torn between compassion and caution. "You can stay on our porch for a bit if you'd like. Maybe I can convince my father to let you stay the night." At that moment, a tall, broad-shouldered man in stained overalls appeared around the corner. His weathered hands held a pail of feed. The creases in his face told a lifetime of hard work under the sun. Garrett took one look at Ethan and set the feed down with a firm thud. "Who's this?" Garrett asked, his tone guarded. Layla placed a hand gently on her father's arm, as though trying to quell his protective instincts. "He's hurt and hungry. I gave him some water, and Do we have the means to feed another mouth, girl? You know how tight things have been." Garrett's voice was gruff, though not unkind. Ethan immediately felt his heart sink. He had enough money in his pocket to buy a loaf of bread, but he had to maintain the charade that he was nearly penniless. Layla lowered her gaze. "Father, please? We can't just turn him away. He can rest here for one night, and I'll make something simple for dinner." Garrett's lips pressed together. His penetrating gaze swept over Ethan, likely checking for any hint of dishonesty or danger. "One night," he finally said, his voice tight. "But you pull any trouble, and you're out. Understand?" Ethan nodded, feigning meekness. "I understand, sir. Thank you." Something in Garrett's expression softened. "Well then, I'll go wash up. Supper's in half an hour." He addressed Ethan more directly. "If you're staying, might as well bring in some firewood from the pile. You can carry that, can't you?" Ethan hesitated, glancing at his crutches. He offered a weak smile. "I'll do what I can." Garrett nodded curtly and headed inside, while Layla gently touched Ethan's arm. "Take it easy, he's just testing you," she whispered. "I'll prepare dinner. You can rest, but it'd be wise to help if you're able." Ethan swallowed down rising apprehension. Already, his meticulously planned disguise was being tested. But he reminded himself that he wanted this, a challenge, a chance to prove he wasn't just a billionaire in search of pampering, but a man who could earn his keep. More importantly, he wanted to see if Layla's kindness would persist once she realized he brought no obvious benefits. He made his way to the back of the house, where a small stack of firewood rested against a cedar fence. Leaning both crutches against the fence, he carefully picked up 2 logs, holding them in the crook of his right arm, and hobbled toward the house. Pain flared in his upper body, half from real strain, half from acting as if his left leg was nearly useless. Each step felt grueling, but he managed not to drop anything. When he reached the kitchen door, Layla stood at the stove stirring a pot. The aroma of onions, garlic, and rich broth filled the air, making Ethan's stomach growl. She caught sight of him and smiled a soft, grateful smile. "Thank you," she said, nodding at the logs. "You can stack them by the stove." As Ethan placed the wood down carefully, he tried to catch his breath. This small labor had drained him more than he'd expected. Still, he felt a glimmer of pride. He was, in a tiny way, contributing. Layla noticed his exhaustion. "Why don't you sit down at the table? Dinner will be ready soon," she offered. "We don't have fancy meals, but we'll share whatever we have." He nodded and sat, absorbing the cozy warmth of the farmhouse kitchen. The walls were lined with simple wooden shelves holding jars of homemade preserves, peach jam, pickled cucumbers, strawberry jelly. Modest curtains framed a window that overlooked a part of the farmland. Outside, the setting sun bathed everything in a vibrant orange hue. Moments later, Garrett stomped in, hair damp from a quick wash at the pump. Layla handed him a bowl of steaming stew. Then she served Ethan a generous portion, placing a hunk of fresh bread by his side. The old farmer watched Ethan skeptically for a minute before picking up his own spoon. As Ethan tasted the stew, the flavors of hearty vegetables and tender meat overwhelmed him with gratitude. He was tasting genuine kindness. While they ate, Layla explained how the farm had been in her family for generations, and though they struggled financially, the land remained their pride. Garrett spoke little, but each time he glanced at Ethan, his stare was laced with concern and caution. When dinner finished, Layla offered Ethan a narrow cot in a spare room off the main hallway, apologizing for its small size. To Ethan, it felt like the softest bed he had ever experienced. "Thank you both," he said earnestly. "You don't know how much this means to me." Layla gave him a reassuring smile. "We'll figure it out day by day," she replied, then left him to rest. As Ethan lay there, staring at the low ceiling, he reflected on the day's events. He had found solace in a stranger's kindness, and it felt like a victory. But a gnawing tension simmered beneath his relief. He wondered how long this fragile acceptance would last if they ever discovered he wasn't just some crippled wanderer but one of the wealthiest men in the country. Morning at the farm began with the rooster's crow, echoing across the fields like nature's alarm clock. Ethan stirred on the cot, momentarily forgetting where he was. Instead of the silent hush of a top-floor penthouse, he heard animals stirring, pots clanging in the kitchen, and the faint hum of a radio playing an old tune. Realizing the day's responsibilities, he quickly fumbled for his crutches and made his way out to the kitchen. He found Layla already awake, humming softly as she prepared a modest breakfast. The sunlight painted her brown hair with fleeting golden highlights. A pang of longing nudged Ethan's chest. He realized how unfamiliar the warmth of genuine human contact felt compared to the cold transactions and social niceties he had grown used to in the city. "Good morning," she greeted, handing him a cup of coffee. "I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you," he replied, lowering himself into a chair. "What can I do to help today?" Layla paused, stirring some oatmeal in a pot. "We have a lot to do, but I'm not sure how much you can manage. My father is planning to tend the cornfields and fix a broken fence post." Ethan sipped his coffee, ignoring the slight burn on his tongue. "I'll figure something out. Maybe I can help in small ways, cleaning, feeding the animals, or anything else that doesn't require too much lifting." Layla studied him for a moment, touched by his willingness. "Actually, that would be helpful. Thank you." A few minutes later, Garrett stomped in, his hat tucked under his arm. He gave Ethan a brief nod before grabbing a plate of scrambled eggs. "If you're staying here, you're working," Garrett said matter-of-factly. "You can feed the chickens and check the coop for eggs. It's simple enough." "Of course," Ethan agreed readily. After breakfast, he headed outside. Despite the ache in his arms from using crutches, he felt a stirring sense of purpose. The chickens scattered around the yard, clucking noisily. In the city, his days had been spent in glass offices, negotiating deals worth millions. Here, he was chasing chickens, collecting their eggs, and carefully laying them in a wicker basket. And somehow, it felt more fulfilling than any board meeting he had ever attended. Around midday, he heard the sound of hooves crunching on gravel. From the driveway, a tall man in a fine suit climbed down from a horse-drawn cart loaded with goods, flour, grain, some fresh produce. At first, Ethan found it odd that someone would wear such a stylish ensemble in a small town. Then, he saw the man's face curdle with displeasure as soon as he spotted Ethan. Marcus, the wealthiest merchant in Willowdale, looked every bit the part, slick back hair, glossy boots, and a thin mustache that curled up at the edges. He glared at Ethan with open hostility. "Layla," Marcus called out, his voice louder than necessary. "I've brought the supplies your father requested." "But who is this, stranger?" He let the last word tumble off his tongue with disdain. Layla stepped outside, apron still dusted with flour. "Marcus," she said evenly, "this is Ethan. He's passing through, and we're helping him out for a little while." Marcus let his gaze flit over Ethan's crutches and well-worn clothes, a sneer tugging at his lips. "A crippled drifter, is that it?" Ethan, trying to keep his composure, nodded politely. "Yes, sir. I've been on the road for some time." "TSK," Marcus hissed, turning his focus to Layla. "And here I thought you had more sense. You shouldn't let every stranger into your home. Especially not someone like that." He jerked a thumb in Ethan's direction. Garrett emerged from the barn, wiping sweat from his brow. The tension in the air grew. He took the lead, signing a small ledger to confirm receipt of the supplies. Marcus made a show of delivering each item with pomp, then looked around expectantly. "So, about our previous discussion." He shifted his weight, speaking directly to Layla. She pursed her lips, her eyes darting between Marcus and Ethan. "I told you, Marcus, I'm not interested in any arrangement. We buy supplies from you, but that's all." Marcus's expression soured. He snatched the ledger back, placed it in his leather bag, and turned on his heel. His voice, layered with a mix of menace and whining, drifted over his shoulder. "Well, I hope you don't regret that decision, Layla. Because I'm certainly beginning to think you're ungrateful." He hopped onto his cart and rode away, dust swirling behind the wheels. Garrett scowled, muttering under his breath about the man's arrogance. Layla, hands shaking slightly, sighed and rubbed her temples. "Marcus has been trying to gain our favor for years," she explained to Ethan. "My father does business with him because we don't have many other options in town, but he wants more than that. He wants me to be his wife." Ethan felt an inexplicable flash of protectiveness surge within him. "I see," he replied quietly. Garrett placed a gentle hand on Layla's shoulder. "Don't let him bother you, child. We'll manage just fine." Layla forced a smile, though worry glistened in her eyes. "I know. But it's not just Marcus. It's Talia too." Ethan frowned. "Talia? Well, she used to be my friend. She still is, I guess, but things have been tense. She's the daughter of one of our neighbors, and we grew up together. Lately, she's been vying for Marcus's attention and making me feel like I'm somehow betraying her by rejecting him." Garrett shook his head and muttered, "Folks around here can get jealous real quick. Watch your back, son." The older man paused, suddenly aware of the fatherly tone he had taken, but didn't retract it. Ethan just nodded, absorbing Garrett's protective warning. Over the next few days, a quiet routine took shape on the farm. Ethan continued to help wherever he could, collecting eggs, washing vegetables, and even trying his hand at mild repairs with Garrett's instructions. Layla and Ethan grew closer in small, meaningful ways. They discussed their childhoods. Layla described how she once dreamed of becoming a school teacher, but her family's financial struggles kept her tethered to the farm. Ethan, in turn, lied only by omission, describing the loss of his parents' support, choosing not to clarify that his father still lived, a powerful business mogul. They often shared a laugh when the milk pail tipped over or when Ethan clumsily chased a runaway chicken. Each moment felt honest, unburdened by the weight of prestige. Layla appeared unspoiled by greed or ambition. She treated Ethan with consideration, never pity. Behind their blooming camaraderie, though, resentment stirred elsewhere. Marcus seethed each time he spotted Layla speaking with the crippled stranger. Talia grew wary and spiteful, feeling overshadowed by her old friend's kindness and closeness with Ethan. Whispers circulated among the townsfolk, words like charming beggar, schemer, and fraud. Now and then, traveling merchants or neighbors would catch sight of Ethan on the farm, crutches under his arms, and raise their eyebrows at how quickly he seemed to have integrated into the household. Unbeknownst to Layla and Ethan, these seeds of suspicion would soon bloom into something far more dangerous. For now, though, the two found solace in daily labor and gentle conversation. Under the wide-open sky and rustling cornfields, their bond strengthened, untainted by the complexities of wealth and class that Ethan had left behind. And in stolen moments, like watching the sun slip behind the horizon, they sensed an undeniable spark, a profound tenderness growing between them. Several weeks passed, enough time for Ethan to settle into a rhythm at the farm, though he often had to remind himself never to drop his disguise. He was careful to avoid tasks that might reveal the truth about his leg, tasks like heavy lifting, running, or climbing. Yet each day, the urge to come clean gnawed at him. Every kind gesture Layla showed him felt like a gentle blade of guilt pressing deeper into his heart. One humid afternoon, Ethan and Garrett worked side by side in the barn, organizing tools. The older man had begun to trust him, albeit grudgingly. They hardly spoke, communicating mostly in grunts and nods, but that silent cooperation said more than words could. Suddenly, the sound of frantic footsteps drifted from the yard. Layla burst into the barn, eyes wide and chest heaving. "Papa, Mr. Collins from next door is offering to buy the back acre. He's waiting in the kitchen, but I don't think we should sell." Garrett slammed a hammer onto the workbench in frustration. "We might have no choice," he said tersely. "You know the debt we're in." Layla's voice trembled. "But that's our ancestral land, Papa. It's been in our family for generations." Ethan watched their exchange, heart pounding. He sensed that Garrett's finances were teetering on the brink, partly due to medical expenses for Layla's late mother and ongoing crop issues. Still, it shocked him to see how close they were to losing the land. With an air of finality, Garrett exhaled. "I'll talk to him. If I can negotiate a good price, maybe we can finally pay off our debts and," he hesitated, glancing at Ethan, "and see if we can afford some treatment for you, boy. That leg of yours doesn't seem to be getting any better, does it?" Ethan's stomach lurched. The last thing he wanted was for them to sacrifice their beloved farmland for his supposed medical needs. I don't want you to do that for me," he stammered. Garrett shook his head. "You've been good to us, helped around here more than I expected. It's the least we can do." Layla bit her lip, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "Papa, please don't do this. We'll figure something else out." But Garrett was already marching out of the barn. He might have been tough, but Ethan could see the desperate sorrow in his posture. A sense of looming catastrophe weighed on Ethan all afternoon. Layla refused to speak much, busying herself with chores, her eyes rimmed with red. Guilt stabbed at Ethan's heart. He had come here to test people's sincerity, only to discover sincerity in its purest form. Now Garrett was on the verge of selling sacred family land to pay for a treatment Ethan didn't even need. He decided he couldn't live with the deceit any longer. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of red and violet, Ethan paced the yard, trying to gather the courage to speak the truth. He spotted Layla sitting on the porch swing, her arms wrapped around her knees. "Layla," he said softly. She raised her eyes, shimmering with confusion and sorrow. He swallowed hard, wondering if her compassion would survive his confession. "I need to tell you something, about who I really am." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Before Ethan could respond, a pair of silhouettes appeared at the edge of the porch. Marcus and Talia stood in the fading light, exuding a smug aura. Talia's arms were crossed, while Marcus wore an oily smirk. "We already know," Marcus sneered, stepping forward. "Don't we, Talia?" Talia lifted her chin. "I saw the paperwork in the local clerk's office this morning. Documents about an Ethan Pierce, CEO of Pierce Industries. Then I recognized his face from some old article. I didn't believe it at first, but then the pieces started to fit." Ethan's heart hammered. He tried to keep calm. "You've made a mistake." "I'm not." Talia cut him off, her voice cold. "Don't lie to me. I told Marcus, and we did some digging. The city papers mention how your father, Raymond Pierce, is grooming you for a significant merger. But you've gone missing, apparently disowning your privileges." Marcus gave a mocking laugh. "So, the crippled beggar is actually a wealthy man in disguise. This is rich. I guess the rumors in town about you being suspicious were true after all." Layla rose to her feet, her eyes darting between Ethan and the intruders. Confusion furrowed her brow. "Ethan, is this true? You're some secret millionaire?" Ethan's throat felt dry as dust. He wanted to protest, to tell the story in his own words, but the shame in Layla's eyes froze him. Moments later, Garrett joined them on the porch, drawn by the commotion. He heard only the end of the confrontation. Marcus seized the opportunity to stir the pot. "Garrett, did you know you were giving shelter to the CEO of Pierce Industries? He's got more money than this entire town combined, and you're about to sell your land to help him? Pathetic." Garrett's eyes narrowed, turning to Ethan for confirmation. In that instant, Ethan found it impossible to lie. "Yes, he managed, voice trembling. It's true. My name is Ethan Pierce. I came here disguised because I needed to know if people would care about me for who I am, not for what I have. I never meant. Stop. Layla shouted, tears streaming down her cheeks. The heartbreak and humiliation in her voice cut deeper than any accusation. You let us worry about you, let Papa consider selling our land. And you're a wealthy man who could have afforded any treatment in the world. Ethan tried to reach for her hand, but she recoiled. Layla, please? I never wanted you to sacrifice anything. I was going to tell you the truth. But Marcus was relentless. You see, Garrett, this man duped you all. He's nothing but a fraud, playing the part of a cripple to, what, amuse himself. Talia smirked. Or maybe to seduce Layla with his sob story. Good job, you almost had her fooled. Ethan clenched his jaw, anger blending with guilt. He looked at Layla, trying to convey sincerity. I didn't mean to use you. I just wanted to find someone who would see me as more than a bank account. The night air felt suffocating, tension thick enough to slice with a knife. Garrett's face burned red with fury. Leave, he growled, pointing to the dirt road that led away from the farm. You'd best get off my property before I do something I'll regret. Ethan's world tilted. This place had become a safe haven, where he had felt closer to happiness than ever before. And now, it was all crumbling. Layla's shoulders shook, silent tears glistening on her cheeks. Marcus and Talia wore matching triumphant grins. Finally, Layla took a trembling breath. Go, she whispered. I don't want to see you again. The blow struck harder than he expected. There were no further words. With a bowed head, Ethan limped away, adrenaline and despair mixing in his veins. He didn't even have time to retrieve his few belongings from the spare room. The darkness of the road engulfed him, each step echoing with the painful reminder that he'd inflicted harm on the very people he wished to cherish. Behind him, Marcus and Talia reveled in their success, seizing the chance to turn the entire village against Ethan. Garrett held Layla as she sobbed softly, while confusion and hurt twisted his own heart. He had given Ethan shelter, even warmed up to him in a fatherly way, and now it felt like the worst betrayal of his life. Ethan dragged himself along the moonlit path, tears burning his eyes. He had abandoned his fortune to avoid feeling used, yet in doing so, he had used others. Worse, he had lost the one genuine connection he'd ever found. As the hush of the countryside surrounded him, he wondered if there was any way he could ever mend the wounds he had caused. 2 days later, after sleeping in the back of abandoned barns and on the roadside, Ethan made his way toward the nearest train station, hobbling under the weight of regret. He used his phone, still hidden in his duffel bag, to call Gregory. Within a few hours, the familiar sleek limousine arrived, incongruent with the dusty small-town surroundings. Gregory, with his impeccable posture and subtle concern, opened the door wordlessly. Ethan lowered himself onto the leather seat, feeling more disheveled than he ever had in his life. The cityscape re-emerged, tall buildings piercing the sky. Only days ago, Ethan had found these skyscrapers oppressive, a monument to empty ambition. Now, re-entering them felt like stepping back into a life he had outgrown. When the car pulled up to the Pierce Industries headquarters, reporters swarmed outside, cameras flashing as soon as they recognized Ethan. He ignored their shouted questions, letting security guide him through a private entrance. He soon found himself in his father's plush executive office. Raymond Pierce stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city he practically governed. His silver hair was combed immaculately, his suit tailored to perfection. He did not turn around immediately, instead, he let Ethan stew in anxious silence. At length, Raymond spoke, his voice carrying the steely weight of command. So, you've decided to come back, son? Ethan shook his head, dropping the crutches. He didn't need them here. I had no choice. Raymond spun on his heel, gray eyes sweeping over Ethan's ragged appearance with a mix of disdain and relief. No choice? You always had a choice, Ethan. You chose to abandon your responsibilities, embarrass this family, and run off to that farm. Ethan inhaled slowly, fighting the urge to lash out. I'm not here to fight, father. I just need my own space and some time to fix the damage I've done. A slight smirk twisted Raymond's mouth. The damage you've done? Pierce Industries has been in an uproar. Stock prices dipped the day after you disappeared. Rumor had it you were mentally unstable. I've had to do a lot of smoothing over with our business partners. Ethan closed his eyes, bracing for the news. He knew how quickly the corporate world responded to any whiff of scandal. I'm sorry. Don't bother with apologies, Raymond snapped. We have a more pressing matter. The Reeves family, our major political connection, expects you to honor the arrangement with their daughter, Victoria. They want a wedding. And soon. Ethan stiffened, every muscle in his body tensing. No. I told you before, I'm not marrying someone I don't love for the sake of business or politics. Raymond slammed his fist on the mahogany desk, rattling a set of pens. This isn't optional. Our family's legacy, our entire network of alliances, depends on that union. Anger rose in Ethan's chest, mixing with the heartbreak he still carried from leaving Layla. Well, it's not happening. I would rather walk away from the entire empire than tie myself to someone I don't love. His father glowered, forcibly lowering his tone to a chilling calm. You don't know what love is, boy. You ran off to the countryside under some delusional notion that you'd find a pure-hearted soul who loves you for you. Raymond scoffed. And look where that got you. Humiliated and crawling back. Despite the insult, Ethan's mind flickered to Layla. Even in her anger, she had shown him more genuine care than anyone in this towering building. I may have made mistakes, he said quietly, but at least my intentions were sincere. Raymond rolled his eyes. Listen closely, marry Victoria, or I'll ensure you lose every cent of your inheritance. I'll strip your position at the company, and you'll be left with nothing. Ethan's jaw clenched. The fear that once accompanied such threats was gone. He had endured life without luxury and survived. More than that, he had discovered a richer sense of meaning out there with Layla, even though it ended in disaster. You can take it all, he said, voice trembling with defiance. I don't want it. The older man stared, eyes cold as steel. Foolish boy. You think you can just walk away from everything your ancestors built? Ethan turned to leave, ignoring the pang in his leg from days of forced limping. Yes, I do. There's more to life than your power games, father. As he stormed out of the office, employees gawked, some stepping aside to let him pass. He saw pity in their eyes. A few heads turned and whispered gossip. But none of it mattered. He had to return to Willowdale, one way or another, to apologize, to fix the mess he'd made. Even if Layla never forgave him, he owed her father a heartfelt explanation. Hosted over 3,000 square feet. Now, it felt suffocating, filled with high-end furniture and sophisticated decor that did little to soothe his turmoil. He stared out at the city's neon lights, each flicker a reminder of the empty world he inhabited. A sudden buzz of his phone broke the silence. He answered, expecting perhaps a reporter or a concerned board member. Instead, a harsh voice spoke on the other end. We have Garrett, the old farmer you were staying with. Fear shot through Ethan's veins. What do you mean you have him? A menacing chuckle. We were instructed to pressure him. That's all. But he put up a fight. Now he's pretty banged up. Maybe next time, he'll think twice about letting his daughter mix with the likes of you. Ethan's stomach churned. He recognized the style of intimidation, his father's signature method of forcing compliance. The call ended abruptly, leaving him with a jarring silence filled only by his own rapid heartbeat. Rage flooded every part of him. He hurried out of the penthouse, hopped into his personal car, and broke every speed limit on the highway. The journey took hours, long enough for the sky to turn from black to the pale gray of early dawn. By the time he reached Willowdale, the sun's golden rays illuminated the humble homes. He found Layla outside the local clinic, tears streaking her dusty cheeks. Marcus stood a short distance away, arms crossed, an odd glint in his eye. Without hesitation, Ethan rushed up to Layla, nearly collapsing from the intensity of his own emotions. What happened? He gasped. She whirled around, startled. Her voice cracked with fury. He's hurt, that's what happened. Some thugs cornered him outside our barn. They said it was a warning to keep me away from you. Her eyes blazed with resentment and confusion, searching Ethan's face for answers. Did you do this? The question staggered him. Layla, I swear, I had nothing to do with it. They're my father's men. He's trying to force me to abandon you, or force you to abandon me. I don't know. She looked like she wanted to throw something at him, or collapse, or both. Marcus, seizing the moment, stepped forward and put a hand on Layla's shoulder. Come on, you don't need to talk to him. He's the cause of all this. Don't you touch her, Ethan snarled, stepping between them. He glanced at Layla, seeing the heartbreak etched on her face. I'm sorry. I never wanted this to happen. Layla choked back a sob. My father's in surgery. His arm is broken, and he has bruised ribs. He might be blind in one eye if the swelling doesn't go down. All because of you. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. I'll pay for the best care. I'll fly in specialists. She cut him off, voice trembling with rage. Haven't you done enough? Just leave. Then, almost to herself, she added, I should have known better. People like you always hurt others. Marcus sneered, patting Layla on the shoulder as if trying to console her. I've been telling you, Layla, that is nothing but trouble. You know I'd never let anyone harm your father like this. Ethan trembled, hands clenched into fists. He turned to Marcus. Don't pretend you care. You've done nothing but look for ways to push me out since the start. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Layla, why don't you go inside and wait for news about your father? I'll handle this clown. Layla's face twisted with despair. She glanced at Ethan one last time, tears threatening to spill, before disappearing into the clinic. Marcus advanced, lowering his voice menacingly. Take a hint. She doesn't want you here. Maybe it's time you left Willowdale for good. Ethan squared his shoulders, forcing his anger into a razor-sharp stare. I'm not leaving until I make sure Garrett is safe. Marcus gave a mocking laugh. Suit yourself. You'll only make her hate you more. He strutted away, leaving Ethan standing alone, every nerve on edge. He realized that simply throwing money around wouldn't fix the havoc his father had unleashed. Worse yet, Layla now associated him with this violence. He sank onto a wooden bench outside the clinic, ignoring the worried glances of the townspeople who passed by. Talia appeared at one point, eyes full of scorn. She offered no comfort, only a pointed glare that told him she relished his downfall. Hours later, a nurse stepped out to find Ethan still waiting. Garrett's awake, she said quietly. You can see him now. Inside the small, sterile room, Garrett lay on a bed, bandages around his chest and a splint on his arm. The bruising across his face was severe. He blinked, trying to focus on Ethan's silhouette. What are you doing here? He croaked. Ethan removed his baseball cap, pressing it anxiously between his hands. I had no idea my father would do something so horrible. I'm trying to stop him. Garrett coughed, wincing in pain. Layla's heartbroken, you know. The last thing she needs is you stirring up more trouble. Tears blurred Ethan's vision. He had never felt so powerless. I want to help pay for your medical bills. Anything you need. Garrett managed a weak laugh, which turned into a sharp grimace. You think money solves everything. Typical. Just, go talk to Layla, if she'll even speak to you. Ethan nodded, stepping back. Take care, Garrett. He paused, finding no further words to express his remorse. He lingered in the hallway until he saw Layla exit another patient's room, her eyes swollen from crying. Summoning courage, he approached. Layla, I know you don't want to see me, but please, let me at least apologize. She hugged herself, stepping away. The weight of sorrow bore down on her slender shoulders. An apology won't fix my father's injuries. I know, Ethan whispered, eyes downcast. But I'll make this right. I promise. She gave him a long, hollow look, then turned away without another word. Ethan left the clinic, devastation coursing through him. As night rolled in, he paced the empty streets of Willowdale, trying to come up with a plan. He would have to confront his father, demand that he retract any threats against Garrett and Layla. But he also knew Raymond too well, he wouldn't stop unless Ethan complied with the arranged marriage. One thing was certain, Ethan would never marry Victoria just to appease his father. Even if it meant renouncing his inheritance and influence, he couldn't sacrifice the only love he had ever truly cared about. And if it was too late to win Layla's forgiveness, he could at least ensure her safety. By morning, Ethan had resolved to confront Raymond with every ounce of determination he possessed. But before he could drive off, a commotion erupted near the village square. He followed the noise, finding a crowd gathered around a furious Marcus and a weeping Talia. Confusion rippled through the onlookers. Marcus clenched a sheaf of papers in one hand. I can't believe you did this, Talia. Lied to me about everything. Talia, tear-streaked cheeks glowing in the harsh sunlight, tried to snatch the papers back. Please, Marcus, I didn't mean. But Marcus wrenched away, his voice dripping venom. You said you'd help me ruin Ethan's reputation so I could get closer to Layla. But all you did was feed me false leads, paint me as a fool. And now, you have the nerve to beg for money to escape your debts. Talia's shoulders shook. You promised we'd both get what we wanted. But you never cared about me. You only wanted to humiliate Layla. Yes, I fed you some lies, but you used them to turn the whole town against her and that man. That's on you, too. The villagers murmured in shock. 4 months, Talia and Marcus had orchestrated gossip, manipulating the narrative about Ethan's presence. Now the truth spilled out in messy fragments. Marcus tossed the papers to the ground, letters from creditors with Talia's name on them. The revelations tumbled forth. Talia had large debts from gambling, had twisted stories about Ethan's origins, and fueled Marcus's obsession with Layla, hoping to gain financial support in return. Ethan, watching from the edge of the crowd, felt an odd mixture of anger and relief. This explained the venomous rumors that had spread so quickly. He took a step forward, and Talia's eyes latched onto his, pleading. "I'm sorry," she gasped, tears streaming down. "I was jealous, okay? Layla was always the kind, beloved daughter, and you were an opportunity to what?" Ethan asked, voice taut with anger. She sobbed harder. To show the town she wasn't as perfect as everyone believed. And to impress Marcus, but it all spiraled out of control. The weight of her confession sank in. The crowd began dispersing, shaking their heads at the drama. Marcus, face red with fury, threw Talia a final glare before storming off, no longer interested in covering for her. Whispers floated through the air, conniving, selfish, desperate. Talia shrank beneath the scorn of former friends, tears still rolling down her cheeks. Ethan approached her carefully. "Tal, I'm not sure what to say. You hurt Layla, and you hurt me. But, why now?" Talia let out a shaky breath. "Marcus found out I was pregnant. At first, he promised to marry me if I helped him get rid of you. But after using me to spread lies, he turned on me. Now that I'm in debt, he wants nothing to do with me. I have nowhere to go. Please, just, help me." Ethan's anger softened, replaced by a pang of pity. For all her malice, Talia was now alone and vulnerable, a product of her own making. "I can't speak for Layla, but I know she's compassionate. Maybe she." Just then, Layla and Garrett, arm in a sling, arrived at the square. Garrett's face paled at the sight of Talia's distress. Layla froze, torn between anger and empathy. Talia, trembling, turned to them. I'm sorry. I tried to ruin you both, and I see now that I was wrong. My life is a mess." Layla exchanged a glance with her father, who gave a resigned nod. She stepped forward cautiously, eyes welling. "Talia, you lied to me, manipulated me. You helped Marcus cause all this chaos in the town." Her voice shook, but underlying her words was the hint of the kind-hearted soul Ethan admired. "Still, I wouldn't wish this misery on anyone. If you truly have no place to go, we have extra space at the farm. I can't say we forgive you yet, but I won't let you starve in the streets, either." Talia collapsed onto her knees, sobbing. "Thank you, Layla. I don't deserve it, but thank you." Garrett, grimacing in pain, sighed. "We'll figure out a place for you in the barn for now. But I'm not doing this out of trust, only out of decency." Talia nodded fervently, tears dripping onto the dusty ground. "I understand. I'll help however I can." The crowd slowly dispersed, some whispering that the farmer's daughter was too kind for her own good. Others merely shook their heads in disbelief. Meanwhile, Ethan stood by awkwardly, uncertain if he should approach Layla. A million apologies ran through his mind, but nothing felt adequate. He finally mustered the courage to speak. "Layla, can we talk?" She looked at him for a beat, then turned her gaze to her father, who gave a subtle nod. The tension between father and daughter over Ethan's presence had softened since the revelations about Marcus and Talia. They moved aside to a quieter corner by a row of flowering shrubs. "I wanted to say how sorry I am," Ethan began, voice low. "My father is responsible for what happened to your dad, and I can't forgive him for that. I never asked him to do anything so cruel." Layla studied the ground. "I believe you. But that doesn't undo what's already happened." He inhaled shakily. "I know. I can't change the past, but I want to make amends. Let me pay for whatever your father needs, medical bills, therapy, anything. I'll have him transferred to the best hospital in the state." She closed her eyes. "And then what?" "You go back to your rich world, and we go back to our farm, always looking over our shoulder, afraid your father might hire more men to hurt us again." Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm cutting ties with my father. I've already told him I'd walk away from my inheritance. I won't let him threaten you anymore." A flicker of astonishment crossed Layla's face. "You'd do that?" He nodded, tears pricking his eyes. "Money means nothing if it endangers people I care about. And I care about you more than anything." The vulnerability in his voice sparked an emotional response in Layla's eyes, but she held back. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "But can I trust you again?" Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. Just, let me prove myself. Let me be here for you and your father. I'll stay in Willowdale, help on the farm. If you'll allow it." She studied him for a long moment, tears finally coursing down her cheeks. "If you stay, I don't want any illusions. No more lies. No more secrets." Relief spread through Ethan, though his heart still ached with the knowledge of how much harm had already been done. "No more lies," he promised softly. Layla gave a tentative nod and turned away, leaving him with the faint hope that perhaps, through honest effort, he might mend what he had broken. Ethan wasted no time. He made a final trip to the city, determined to sever his last ties with Raymond and the corporate empire. Though it frightened him to think of a life without financial security, the thought of losing Layla weighed far heavier on his conscience. In his father's office, the tension was palpable. Ethan handed over a formal resignation from all roles in Pierce Industries, along with legal documents relinquishing his inheritance. Raymond skimmed them with a cool, detached expression. When he finished, he tossed the papers onto his desk. "You're making a grave mistake," Raymond warned. "Do you have any idea what you're giving up?" Ethan forced down the lump in his throat. "I know exactly what I'm giving up. And I know exactly what I'm gaining." He recalled the windswept fields, Layla's gentle smile, the promise of something real beyond the city's machinations. Raymond sneered. "This is because of that farm girl, isn't it?" Ethan stiffened. "Her name is Layla. And yes, it's because of her, and because I'm done being controlled." Anger simmered behind Raymond's eyes. "So you choose a life of manual labor over a legacy that spans decades? You'll be a nobody." A small, ironic smile curved Ethan's lips. "I'd rather be a nobody with love than a somebody alone." Raymond, at a loss for words, watched as Ethan turned to leave, stepping away from the cushioned life he had known. A pang of sorrow flashed in the older man's face, but pride and stubbornness bound him. He said nothing more. Ethan returned to Willowdale with a battered pickup truck, purchased with the last of his personal savings, filled with supplies for the farm. The moment he stepped onto the property, he felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of corporate responsibilities. Garrett, arms still in a sling, was standing by the barn, and Ethan greeted him with quiet respect. "I brought lumber, tools, seeds, some fertilizer," Ethan explained, pointing to the loaded truck bed. "They're yours if you want them." Garrett eyed the offering suspiciously, then gave a curt nod. "If you're here to work, get started with the new fence. Storm last night knocked a few posts loose." A flicker of gratitude lit Ethan's eyes. "On it." He rolled up his sleeves and got to work, making sure to keep his movements deliberate. He no longer needed the crutches, but his muscles were unaccustomed to manual labor. Still, a sense of fulfillment fueled him. Layla joined him in the field, quietly handing him tools. Her presence warmed him, though she said little. Over the hours, they found a certain rhythm, one that felt almost like old times, before the facade fell apart. Ethan hammered stakes into the ground, sweat beading his brow, while Layla steadied the fence boards. A gentle breeze wafted through the tall grass. By late afternoon, they had repaired most of the fence line. Panting and exhausted, Ethan dropped to a seat on a bale of hay. Layla wiped her brow, sitting next to him. The sky began to blush with sunset colors. "Thank you," Ethan said softly. Layla glanced at him. "For what?" "Giving me a chance to help. Letting me be here." She chewed her lip, hesitating. "The last time I gave you my trust, well, you know how it ended." Ethan's chest constricted with guilt. "I know. And you have every right to resent me. But I swear, I'm here to stay, for as long as you'll have me." She stared at the horizon, the fading sun casting long shadows. "You've given up everything, your inheritance, your old life. I still can't believe it." He reached out and gently took her hand, grateful that she didn't pull away. "I finally realized money doesn't matter without someone to share life with. And I didn't want to be beholden to a man who could hurt innocent people on a whim." Tears glinted in her eyes. "I hate what your father did, but I'm sorry you had to leave your family." Ethan squeezed her hand lightly. "I'm not. This is my family now, if you'll have me." In the glow of the dying sun, Layla leaned her head on his shoulder, letting out a breath she seemed to have been holding for a long time. They stayed like that, the painful memories of the last few weeks slowly yielding to a cautious hope for the future. Meanwhile, Talia, now visibly pregnant, watched from the kitchen window with a mixture of regret and envy. She was doing her best to help around the farm, sweeping floors, cleaning dishes, assisting with small errands. Garrett allowed her to stay in a spare room for the time being, still wary of her intentions. However, as time passed, her contrition appeared genuine. She lived with the daily reminder of her mistakes, and the unborn child that had no father to protect it. Weeks rolled by in a blur of hard work and slow healing. Garrett's injuries began to mend, though he remained cautious in his movements. Layla noted a new gentleness in her father's demeanor. Once fiercely protective, he now seemed to consider Ethan more like a member of the family. They still had their moments of tension. Garrett rarely uttered more than a gruff morning or hand me that hammer when addressing Ethan, but the silent acceptance spoke volumes. One crisp morning, as autumn leaves drifted across the yard, Layla approached Ethan with a tremulous smile. I have something to tell you. His heart thumped. Is everything all right? She nodded, cheeks flushing. Yes. I'm late. By a few weeks. Her voice broke, a rush of nerves overwhelming her. I might be pregnant. The words stilled Ethan, and for a second, the world seemed to freeze. Then a flood of joy, mingled with fear, coursed through him. He gently took her hands. Layla, that's incredible news. Are you okay? She exhaled shakily. I'm scared. We've been through so much. And I don't know what the future holds. Ethan's voice shook with emotion. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We'll do this together. A tear of relief slid down Layla's cheek. She moved into his arms, letting him hold her. In that embrace, they felt a quiet sense of destiny, two paths converging despite all odds. Later that day, they visited the small clinic, where a gentle, grandmotherly nurse confirmed the pregnancy test. Layla was indeed expecting. Though 1,000 worries buzzed through her mind, finances, medical expenses, the unpredictability of the farm, she also felt a glowing spark in her chest. She was having Ethan's child, the man she had once despised for his lies, yet grown to love for his genuine heart. Word spread quickly around Willowdale. While many offered cautious congratulations, some wondered if Ethan, the disgraced heir, would skip town once the responsibility became too heavy. Yet each day, he showed his steadfastness by toiling in the fields, helping Garrett, and ensuring Layla got the care she needed. In a surprising twist, Raymond Pierce made a quiet visit to Willowdale. He arrived without an entourage, stepping onto the farm looking disheveled and older than Ethan remembered. The conversation that followed was tense but necessary. I thought you said you'd never come here, Ethan said, standing protectively beside Layla. Raymond cleared his throat, eyes darting around the humble farmhouse. I heard about the baby, he admitted, voice softer than Ethan had ever known. I won't pretend to understand all your decisions. But you're my son, and I'd like to offer some support, for the child, at least. Layla exchanged a wary glance with Ethan. She remembered the bruises on her father's face, courtesy of Raymond's henchman. Still, the older man's remorse seemed genuine. She lowered her gaze. Mr. Pierce, I can't accept money from you, not after what happened. Raymond looked pained. I can't undo what my men did. I regret it. I'd like to try to make amends. Even if you don't forgive me, I'd like you to know that your child will always have a grandfather who, he paused, swallowing hard, who can be there if needed. Ethan felt the lumps of bitterness in his throat. Memories of betrayal warred with the faint image of a father who might have once cared for him. We don't want your bribes. But if you're truly sorry, maybe in time we can. Raymond raised a hand, cutting him off gently. I'm not here to buy forgiveness. I'm here to apologize. His gaze lingered on Garrett, who stood stiffly in the corner. I'd like to pay for your medical bills at least. It's the least I can do. Garrett, eyes shaded with fatigue, nodded curtly. I appreciate the gesture, but I won't be sold, Pierce. We can handle ourselves. And if I ever catch wind of you hurting my daughter or Ethan again, I'll personally drag you through the fields. He winced at the pain in his ribcage, but his threat remained unwavering. Raymond lowered his head. Understood. The tension in the room hummed, but for the first time, father and son shared a moment that wasn't defined by corporate dominance. A fragile acceptance began to take root. The men parted ways with careful words, not entirely reconciled but on a path that could lead to something resembling a truce. Meanwhile, Talia, burdened by her own pregnancy, watched these events unfold, heart heavy with regret. As her belly grew, she struggled to find a place in Willowdale, where gossip clung to her like a shadow. One evening, Layla found her crying outside the barn, shivering in the autumn breeze. Talia? Layla approached hesitantly. "Are you all right?" Talia shook her head, face streaked with tears. "I'm lonely. Marcus won't talk to me. My parents refuse to help me. I feel like a burden here." Layla knelt beside her. "I can't blame people for being angry, Talia. You hurt a lot of folks with your lies." She nodded, sobbing. "I know. And now I'm paying for it. This child didn't ask for any of this. I don't want to bring a baby into a world where no one loves it." Layla's heart twisted. Despite their fraught history, she recognized Talia's genuine remorse. "You're not alone. Even if we're not friends like before, no child should suffer for our mistakes. We'll help you as much as we can, but you need to make things right with the town." Talia sniffled, gratitude and regret mingling in her eyes. "I will. Starting with you." In that moment, a seed of mutual understanding sprouted between the two women. Talia resolved to mend fences, while Layla, carrying her own unborn child, felt a profound empathy for the struggles Talia faced. She offered Talia a hand, helping her stand, and for the first time in months, they shared a moment of genuine compassion. Spring arrived like a cleansing breeze, ushering in a season of renewal. The farmland came alive with green shoots pushing through soft earth. Flowers dotted the fields, and the orchard bloomed with delicate blossoms. Day by day, the farm recovered from its ordeals. Debt remained a challenge, but with Ethan's business savvy, honed from years in corporate boardrooms, and Layla's innate wisdom, they found new ways to make the farm profitable. They diversified their crops, added a small dairy operation, and reached out to neighboring towns with fresh produce markets. In time, Willowdale began to notice these changes. A few locals, once swayed by Marcus's lies, returned to buy produce, impressed by the farm's rejuvenation. Gradually, the rumors and hostility faded, replaced by cautious admiration for the couple's perseverance. Ethan and Layla wed in a simple ceremony beneath a grand oak tree at the edge of the property. Only close friends and neighbors attended, with Talia tearfully offering to arrange bouquets of wildflowers. Garrett, arms still stiff, gave Layla away, his face beaming with quiet pride. Raymond Pierce sent a letter of congratulations and a modest gift, choosing not to overshadow the event with his presence, respecting the fragile peace they had established. Despite its humble scale, the wedding carried a resonance of true love, binding two souls who had traversed lies, betrayal, and heartbreak to reach a place of mutual trust. As Ethan and Layla exchanged vows, the farmland shimmered in the warm glow of sunset. Layla's eyes shone as she promised to stand by Ethan, in truth and in trial, in calm and in storm, while Ethan, voice wavering with emotion, vowed to protect and cherish her, to give more than I take, to love without condition. When the first baby arrived, a little girl they named Sadie, it felt like a revelation. Holding his daughter in his arms, Ethan understood the depth of devotion and responsibility that came with fatherhood. He doted on the tiny infant, singing lullabies he barely remembered from childhood. Layla, exhausted but overjoyed, marveled at how far they had come from that first day she offered a stranger water on the porch. Talia, too, gave birth to a boy she named Luca. Though she struggled financially, she used her experience and newfound humility to seek honest work. Some neighbors, now less suspicious, offered her babysitting jobs and cleaning tasks. With Layla's encouragement, Talia slowly rebuilt her life, determined to give Luca a kinder future than her own past. She often whispered thanks to Layla, who insisted no thanks were necessary, helping each other was just the right thing to do. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself disgraced, his merchant business faltering. Once the wealthiest man in town, he lost customers who refused to be associated with his manipulative tactics. Bitterness consumed him, but he lacked the cunning to recover from his downfall. Rumor had it he fled Willowdale, nursing a wounded pride. Ethan and Layla prospered not through unimaginable riches but through a growing bond of community. Word spread of their farm's success, a blend of innovative methods and neighborly goodwill. In time, families from nearby towns visited to see the orchard blossoms, buy the farm's produce, or simply witness the magical transformation of a place once burdened by debt. On a warm summer afternoon, Ethan walked along the property, pausing to admire the orchard. Rows of apple trees stretched in neat lines, their leaves rustling in the breeze. He heard laughter from the farmhouse porch, Layla and Sadie playing some game of peekaboo, while Garrett dozed in a rocking chair. Talia sat by the barn with baby Luca, the two children occasionally babbling in curious, infant chatter. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling tears slip down his face. He remembered how his journey had begun, fueled by cynicism and a desperation to find genuine affection. He had found it here, in the unwavering kindness of Layla, in the acceptance of her father, and in a community that valued character over wealth. Though the path had been marred by deception and conflict, the result was a life richer than any boardroom victory. He approached the porch, where Layla looked up at him with love brimming in her gaze. "Everything all right?" she asked, noticing the gleam of tears in his eyes. He nodded, a warm smile spreading across his face. "I was just thinking how lucky I am." Layla took his hand, guiding him to sit beside her. Sadie clapped her tiny hands, giggling at the presence of her father. Ethan scooped the baby into his lap, brushing a gentle kiss on her forehead. Garrett stirred, smiling quietly at the sight. In the distance, the golden field swayed, a testament to the honest labor and unity that now defined their life. It was a story that circulated beyond Willowdale, inspiring people to question their own pursuit of material wealth and reminding them that beneath every social status, there could be a heart beating in longing for love and acceptance. Layla and Ethan's farm thrived, not because of the billions Ethan once possessed, but through shared respect, perseverance, and the simple truth that real prosperity blossoms when people value each other for who they truly are. No matter how humble the setting, no matter how steep the odds, kindness and integrity would always be the seeds of enduring success. In the end, it wasn't about the sensational revelation that a powerful CEO had disguised himself as a crippled wanderer. It was about a farmer's daughter who possessed the compassion to feed a stranger, the bravery to confront betrayal, and the grace to forgive. Together, they built a family and a community bound by love that no amount of greed or manipulation could ever destroy. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment your thoughts and share. See you in the next story. AFRITALES by Moonlight.